Hello and welcome to Certified Ethical Hacker version 12. My name is Eric Reed and I will be your instructor for this course. We're going to start off with a course introduction, a little bit of background on myself. Again, my name is Eric Reed. I've got a few industry certifications. We're here to focus primarily on CEH. But I'm going to talk a little bit about my background and my beginnings as a career changer, which some of you attending this course might be making a career transition. And if you are doing that, I applaud you, support you in that. It was the best decision I ever made. Early on, around 1983, I saw the movie War Games and got obsessed with computers. Had to have a computer, nagged my parents to no end about it. They finally said, hey, tell you what, you pay for half of it, we'll pay half. It was like $400 back in 1983. That was a lot of money, but I ended up earning my half. They paid for their half. And I leveraged my first war dialing attack shortly thereafter. So I've been intrigued, fascinated, passionate about computers ever since. Interests have come and gone through the years, but the constant that's always been there is love for technology and computers. So in 1983, I cut my teeth as a hacker. In 1988, I actually went to work at a CBS television affiliate in Sacramento, California, thinking I wanted to be a newscaster. And I supported an AppleTalk network. So we had a little 2-node network. So my first network support IT job, I like to say, was 1988. But it wasn't until several years later that I even considered doing computers and technology and network administration as a primary focus. It just didn't seem like somebody was going to pay me to do my hobby full time. I never quite lined up for me. In 1999, I heard about these things called IT certifications and specifically the MCSE, and it got me a little bit intrigued. You could get a bachelor's degree equivalent salary in about 6 months by getting the certifications. So needless to say, my interest was piqued. We actually accelerate that even more so you can hit that earning potential in a much shorter time frame. And that is one of the outcomes of taking CEH is increasing your marketability and your earnings potential. But we will talk about that. I became a career change student after checking out a Microsoft CTEC in Minneapolis, Minnesota. It started off with A+ training. I started taking PC hardware basics at night and I could not get enough of it. It was everything lined up, seemed like a great fit, absolutely loved it. Was considering and planning on being a network administrator because that was the focus and I wanted to be a systems engineer. But it started with A+ training and I found out I loved hardware repair probably more than anything else initially. I was constantly working on PCs and swapping out parts. So I became a technology intern for the training center pretty shortly thereafter. And then that actually turned into a full-time position doing classroom setups, networking, running cables, and that sort of thing. In the meantime, I had heard somewhere along the lines that if you could explain it to somebody, and most importantly, you can explain it simply, then you understand it. And somebody said Albert Einstein once said that. So I got that kind of stuck in my head. And when I was offered the opportunity to teach the hardware class at night the following December, I took it kind of on a dare just to see if I could explain it to somebody and most importantly, explain it simply and conceptually. And then I figured out I absolutely love technical instruction. I never would have guessed. I didn't set out to become an instructor. I fell into it kind of sideways, and I absolutely love it. And I've been a technical instructor in some capacity ever since. It's typically my primary focus. I do consulting and contracting work. My first love is being in the classroom. I love transferring knowledge. I love watching the light bulbs come on. And I love watching people improve their credentials, their possibilities for employment, increased earnings. Absolutely love this stuff. So since 1999, I've been a professional instructor. In 2005, again, kind of on a whim, I heard about this thing called CEH and was offered the opportunity to go get trained as an instructor. And I remember thinking it sounded kind of novel and would there be a market for that? But on Tuesday morning of that week in 2005, I finally figured out exactly what I wanted to do when I grew up, and that was to be a security professional. This stuff was fascinating, exhilarating, terrifying at the same time just the volume of information, the areas of IT I'd never touched, development, SQL, Exchange, Cisco, areas I'd never touched. I was absolutely just mesmerized. And I decided to make it my primary focus. So in 2005, I became a CEH. I also became a certified EC Council instructor. And I have been with EC Council ever since. They are a fantastic organization to work with. They put out some of the best looking courseware in the industry, hands down. They got a fantastic course catalog. We'll be talking about some of the offerings as we go through the course. And I've been fortunate enough to be able to do their self-study videos for CEH since version 7, and now we're on version 12. So I'm also a CEH master. We'll talk a little bit more about that in the exam preparation, the wrap-ups. I'll talk a little bit about that initially. Certified EC Council security analyst, licensed penetration tester, forensics investigator, network defender, network defense architect, incident handler, encryption specialist, etc. So I've racked up a few certifications over the years, but my absolute favorite course to teach, hands down, is CEH. It is the coolest course in information security certifications. Security is a huge range of possibilities and potential. There are hundreds of thousands of job openings in cybersecurity. So if you love this stuff, you couldn't be in a better position right now. Lots of openings, and CEH is the foundation that pretty much everything else is based off of. This core nucleus of what hackers do. All of the other security disciplines kind of orbit around that. You got forensics and network defense and incident response, but it's all based on what the bad guys are doing and trying to minimize the damage. So I've been teaching CEH for 17 years now, since 2005, and I'm really excited to be bringing you the latest version of CEH with version 12. So glad to have you. Let's talk about what the course involves. All right, so the CEH program, it is extremely comprehensive. Now, one thing EC Council does better than any other vendor is they pack a ton of value and a ton of breadth into a single offering. Sometimes to the point where it's kind of bursting at the seams and it's difficult to cover everything in one pass. And I don't recommend that, actually. I came from a background where you had courseware that was about that thick. You covered it in a 5-day class and you exhausted everything. You talked about every detail in the courseware because the scope was fairly narrow and very focused. When I sat down for my first CEH course, they dropped 3 3-ring binders in front of me like that. And I remember looking down going, what's this? We're going to cover this in 5 days? Wow. What I figured out is there's more than you want to cover in the 5 days. You want to get that foundational broad brushstroke overview, the skeleton or the outline built, and then you start adding detail to it as you go back through the courseware. So it's a pretty voluminous amount of information to address in one sitting to the point where your brain may shut down. But when you approach it in multiple passes and build structural outlines, core concepts, explain it simply and concisely, you get a clear understanding of all of the components involved, and then the frameworks, and most importantly, the hacking cycle that we follow, steps 1 through 5. Once you get all that down, your skeleton is built, your foundation is built, and then as you go back through and repeat the labs and dig deeper and deeper, you start adding or fleshing out that skeleton and start adding in that minutia. So this is definitely recommended that you take this in a multi-pass type of strategy. And like I said, I've been teaching this course for 17 years. My objective with you on this first run through is to give you the foundation, the overall framework, the broad brushstroke, the primary concepts, most pertinent pieces of information, and definitely the most relevant tools. Give you that first pass through so you've gone from footprinting and reconnaissance to scanning, to gaining access, to escalating privileges, to maintaining access, to covering tracks, to web applications, to malware, to denial of service. Once you've got all those pieces and you've seen it in one pass, done the first core set of labs, then I'm going to recommend you take a little time, you prepare for the exam, you get that knocked out, and then you come back for your second, third, or fourth passes through the material in the lab environment to really get comfortable with the tools. There is a lot to everything in this course. The rabbit hole always goes deeper. So don't try try to pick up absolutely everything on the first pass, it'll kind of drive you nuts. And just know that the course isn't designed to be something you sit down one time and completely digest. It's way, way too packed with information to do that. A strategy of multi-pass is definitely the best way to approach it. So your pass with me this first run through would be the same type of pass you'd be taking in a 5-day or a 10-night delivery in a live course. I'll go over the timings and the whole 9 yards with you. So one thing I would recommend is you set a schedule and you stick to it. Now, a little bit on the course information, just to give you an idea of how much information this is. 1,641 slides, 3,424 pages of courseware, 1,799 pages of lab manual, expected lab duration 32 hours, and everything in the course is fair game for the exam. That's kind of overwhelming. So the first thing I do is I do a director's cut of the slide deck when a new version of the course comes out, and I've been doing it for our filming process here. And I grab the slides that are the most pertinent information, that drive the points home, that give us the basic framework. And I try to cut out a lot of the minutia, the stuff that really doesn't matter. Why can we do gratuitous ARPs to begin with? Right now, it doesn't matter. ARP poisoning allows you to sniff a switch network. Okay, got it. Later on, you want to answer that question, why do we do gratuitous ARPs? Then you can kind of fill in those blanks. But if you try to address every detail in the first pass, your brain's going to shut down. It's going to start saying reject, 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 and you're not taking up any new information. So my job is to give you, again, that first pass through, nice and smooth, make everything understandable, describe it simply and precisely so you understand everything conceptually. Once you've got that anchored down, it's there, then you start building things out. All right, so there's 3,424 pages of courseware. That's a big book, and 1,799 pages of lab manual. So again, I take and I create an Eric's Director's Cut version of the slides. And I also will be running through the core labs with you in the core lab manual. Now, the core labs are designed to, again, communicate the most pertinent topics, to give you the best examples of tool usage, and to fit everything into what would normally be a 5-day delivery. So just to give you an idea, a normal class day for a live 5-day delivery would be 8 to 4 p.m. In the evenings, it's 6 to 9:30 p.m. So you've got about a 7-hour day as far as lecture and labs go. And the way I typically organize my course is in 2 learning cycles, AM and PM. I'll talk about that here in just a little bit. But the idea there is to get the lecture, the demos, and the labs in and touch a little bit on exam prep within that 40-hour training week. And there's some nipping and tucking that goes on with, again, that first pass through. But remember, the course is not designed to be a sit once, that's it, end of conversation. It's meant to be something that's revisited over and over and over again. And every time you go through it, you learn more information and you dive deeper. The rabbit hole goes as deep as you want it to. There's always more to learn, and the course materials have plenty of additional detail. All right, the lab core exercises, once you complete the core labs, then I recommend on your second pass through the labs, you do all of the labs, the core labs you did the first pass, and the additional labs in their entirety. And then I'll recommend you go through those a few times until you're really comfortable. Now, if you're preparing for the practical exam, there's a very specific set of labs that most of those practical challenges are based on, and that is covered in your core labs. So again, everything in the course is fair game for the exam. The exam preparation materials provided will help to prepare for that. But I do recommend you take the course in the exam in kind of different perspectives or objectives. There's a couple of objectives to taking certification training. One is the practical application of the skill set, the enhancement of your abilities, the pay raise that goes along with getting your certification. So the practical application is one side of it, and the academic or test preparation examination side is sort of the flip side of that coin. The two don't always totally line up. So I recommend that you do the course first, take some time out for exam prep, knock the exam out, then you come back and you start reviewing the course materials and go back for your second, third, or fourth passes. And I'm going to diagram all that out here in just a second. All right, the course outline, just to give you an idea, a normal 5-day course will look something like this. In the morning, we cover on day 1 AM, we cover modules 1 and 2, do the corresponding labs. Okay, in the afternoon, It's scanning networks. On day 2, enumeration and vulnerability analysis, 2 a.m. System hacking, 2 p.m. On Wednesday, on the third day, which is typically a Wednesday morning, it's malware threats, 3 a.m. Sniffing and social engineering in the afternoon, which would be 3 p.m. Denial of service, session hijacking and evading IDS firewalls and honeypots, that happens on day 4 a.m. Hacking web servers, hacking web applications, and a little SQL injection happens on day 4 p.m. And then Friday or day 5 morning, a.m., is hacking wireless networks to mobile platforms. And then day 5 p.m. is IoT and OT, cloud computing and cryptography. So that's how I deliver a 5-day live course. If it's a night course, then it's quite simply session 1, session 2, session 3, session 4, etc. So I like laying out that timing format just to give you an idea of what your time expenditure, time commitment should be approximately for the course. Now, of course, you can just take it as slow and steady as you like. What I've found is when I don't have a structured schedule, things just kind of go on forever. So with anything that doesn't map to a specific appointment schedule, I have a tendency to let it kind of go and go and go. So if you're like me, I recommend you set out some structured study time and you cover modules 1 and 2, for example, in one sitting. You do the corresponding labs. Module 3 in one sitting, you do the corresponding labs. And if you want to follow that outline, and sorry, my writing is actually getting worse as time goes on here, but you can review this. You can review this video and play that back. And again, that's just giving you basic framework or basic structure. All right, typically in a live class, my students are ready to prepare to take the exam. We typically do that on a Friday, but I would schedule and register for the exam when you feel comfortable with the course materials. And once you've, again, passed the exam, there's also a practical exam where you want to revisit the labs and be able to repeat the labs in a structured lab environment. There's challenges or questions that to answer those questions, you need to complete the lab exercises. So there's 2 exams that I'll talk about that here in just a second. All right, the CH class speed, it is extremely fast paced. There's a ton of information to cover. And again, we don't cover everything in one sitting or the first pass. Highly recommended that you have fundamental understanding of operating systems, file systems, computer networks, TCP, IP, etc. So some foundational knowledge is definitely recommended. The instructor will demonstrate a few of the tools during the lecture, but that's what the labs are for. So the labs will give you firsthand experience with the tools and their usage. And we do have video recordings throughout the course of me walking you through the labs. Students are required to practice with the tools, not demonstrate in class on their own. So that means there's always more to learn. There's always more to play with. The lab sessions reinforce the classroom sessions. They give a hands-on experience only, does not guarantee proficiency. That's code for there's always more to learn with tools. Now, we have got a huge range of tools. You may have 5-day courses that focus on nothing but web application penetration testing with 2 core tools. So again, this is kind of a broad brushstroke, expansive overview. We take you to the functional depth with the tools. You're going to understand their basic usage, how they work, and you'll have plenty of information to dig deeper if you choose to. All right, there's tons of labs in the lab manual. We just mentioned that. We do the core labs on the first pass through. The self-studies are also recommended on your second pass. All right, you can subscribe to CyberQ, which CyberQ is EC Council's cloud-based virtual lab platform. Lots of cool capture the flag features. And again, your iLab environment or cloud-based environment will be included with the course, typically, depending on your package. All right, the Certified Ethical Hacker track. All right, the start attend training is where you are right now. We're going to call that phase 1. Then I recommend you take some time out and prepare for the exam. That's phase 2. Once you've passed the exam, then that's phase 3 and beyond. But I do recommend that you get the exam out of the way. The exam that you don't schedule and take is like the book report you've had all summer to write. It's just kind of looming there. Get it knocked out, get it covered, and get your certification achieved. Then you can relax, go back to the lab environment and work through the labs and the material at your own pace without the test anxiety looming. Now, there's also a practical exam, which may or may not be included in your package. That's a separate exam where you complete a series of 20 challenges. It's based on the lab exercises, but to get your CEH, you pass the multiple choice exam or multiple choice question, ANSI accredited exam. And then there's the practical, which is again a practical challenge-based, lab-based scenario exam. If you pass both the CEH, MCQ, ANSI, and the practical, you earn the designation of CH Master, which is a pretty cool title. All right, so there are two separate exams. The exam is the 312 TAC 50. It's 125 questions. You get 4 hours to take it. Passing percentage ranges are from 69 to 84%. What? It's a pretty wide variance, Eric. What do you mean 69 to 84? It depends on the exam questions that are selected for your specific exam and their difficulty levels. So you have a sliding range depending on the point values of the questions, anywhere between 69 to 84%. All right. And that completes the course overview on the logistics, a little bit on the expectations, the time commitment. Like I said, you can knock it out in 40 hours. You can knock it out over 10, 3.5-hour evenings. But I do recommend you set a schedule and you stick to it. Makes it a lot easier to make progress and progression. So that's the intro to the course. Great to have you. We're going to have a lot of fun in this course. And again, this is just the beginning. So once you've completed the labs and the materials and the lectures, then you definitely want to go back, revisit the labs, work through them a couple times so you're really comfortable with the tools. And then next steps after CEH, typically there's the CPENT course that comes right after it. There's also forensics and incident response and SOC analysts and a variety of other directions you can go. So let's start hacking. Welcome to the course. Up next is Module 1, dealing with Introduction to Ethical Hacking.